All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome to the Palantir Friday morning show. Not morning, it's like noon right now. How are you guys doing today? Hopefully, everybody's doing good. I managed to sneak out of here yesterday and watched Indiana Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny. And I have some thoughts about it. I have some interesting ideas on the movie. And I will say that. It's definitely not ranked high among the Indiana Jones series. I think there's a lot to be left desired, but we'll get into it coming up here. So if you guys haven't been to the Palantir before, the Palantir, of course, is the Seeing Stones of the Lord of the Rings. And so I decided I wanted to name the show that because we see into the future. But also, it is a company, a tech company that trades in on the stock market, which I am heavily invested in. I have invested a lot of my wife's retirement money on like a YOLO chance to go like all in, and hopefully she'll be a millionaire. I'll be dead. She'll have a bunch of money, but that'll be all good. So every week I like to come in here and check in on the Palantir stock, and so the first thing I'm going to do is do that. And I figured out how to zoom this thing here and do it. So Palantir, just real quick, of course, is my little fun little thing to do. Palantir is a company that basically uses AI, so like Shine, if you're following our normal shows, and it takes AI and it goes into businesses and it figures out how to make them more efficient. And so this company, I really think it's going to be one of those huge companies that's like, $200-$300 a share stock someday. So right now we're sitting on $20,000, a little over $20,000 for Palantir, and hoping that it goes through the roof, but we'll see what happens. And hopefully it doesn't lose all of its money and then my wife ends up divorcing me. So anyways, hopefully you guys are doing good. Good to see everybody here in the chat. We've got Penny and we got Archmage Frey and Lord Toth. Thanks for hanging out with me. Christopher Mays, Kenneth LaRoque. Good to see you guys. And all the favorites, all the normals. So all right, good to see you guys. So let's get on to the business of Indiana Jones. I really don't have anything else to share. Brian is prepping for his show on Sunday. He'll be doing the Popcorn Power Hour, and he'll be actually talking Indiana Jones then. He's got some different ideas on what's going on. But let's talk about Indiana Jones box office expectations. So the first thing I can tell you is that I went to the movie last night. It was the 5 o'clock showing, and the theater was not packed. It was, and I guess it's Thursday, 5 o'clock on a Thursday, still a work day. So you may not expect the theater to be packed. It was, I would say, half full. I will say that we watched the whole movie. It was a long movie, over 2 hours. And at the end of the movie, some of the people, whistled and clapped, and a couple people cried, which I thought was very interesting. I did not have any of those emotions. I was mildly frustrated going into the ending. And just by the way, there will be spoilers today. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and you're going to watch it, then you'll want to come back and check out this take maybe later this weekend after you get a chance to see it. If you don't care, then hang out and we'll talk about it. So the first thing before we talk about Indiana Jones and what I thought of it, and kind of break it down for you a little bit, let's talk about expectations. So as we know, Disney's been a shit show this year. Their movies are not making money. They got their butts beat by Super Mario Brothers and Universal, and they're just not having a good go at the movie theaters. So this Indiana Jones movie was really kind of supposed to be a barometer on, like, if something's going to pull it out for them this year, it's going to need to be Indiana Jones, because none of their other cartoons, none of their other animation is really doing anything this year. The Elementals movie, nothing. So taking a look here at the expectations for the box office. So Indiana Jones 5, if you look over here at this Variety article, it says to lasso $65 million opening, a decent start, except for its huge budget at $295 million. And if we know anything about this, the $295 million budget really doesn't include marketing. And this was an extraordinarily expensive film to make. I mean, honestly, this movie needs to make probably 5 or 600 million, really, in order to be a success. Now, the good news is I did just see reports that The international opening was 160 million, which is actually really good news for them. But let's just take a look. So a $65 million opening um, for domestic audiences here in the United States. Let's see if they can pull that off. If they can manage to pull it off and again get it done. And honestly, it's been out for a month, so it aired in Cannes a month ago, and I was, I told you guys, I was actually really frustrated the fact that it came out so early because people had seen it, and then people started, finding it on the high seas and started downloading it, and people were watching these crappy copies, and I just wanted to be able to see it myself to have a take on what I thought this movie was going to be like, and it did not exit well from Cannes. And now that I've seen it myself, I kind of understand why there was kind of this meh reaction to it at the end. And I'll explain here shortly why that's the case. It is the 4th of July weekend, so they're expecting to get a big boost. People will be out and about wanting to go see the movies. There are some things coming up, though. So for people who are saving their money, they have to decide. Do they want to go see in the 5th installment of Indiana Jones, or do they want to go see, on July 12th, do they want to go see Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1, which is anticipated? I mean, I don't know. I think Indiana Jones 5 lost a ton of steam when it came out at Cannes. But this Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise doing these ridiculous stunts, I mean, it's got a lot of hype to it. Also, a lot of hype in the month of July is Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's atomic bomb drama, which frankly is the biggest movie I've been looking forward to all year is Oppenheimer. So people are going to have to determine, how many people are going to go see 3 movies in the month of July? It's hard. It's hard to afford. I mean, we went to the movies last night. It took 2 of my kids. So there were 4 of us that went. It probably cost, after you buy the tickets online. And by the way, I hate this about the charges. When you buy the tickets, you have to buy the tickets online nowadays so that you can pick your seat. Because if you wait and buy the tickets at the theater, let's say you drive all the way down to the theater and you buy it there, you can, to avoid the additional charge. And it's an intense charge. It's like $4 or $5 a ticket extra charge to buy it online. But if you wait till you get to the theater to buy it, there may not be seats. And how do you know if there's going to be seats together? And how do you know there's going to be seats at the showing you want to go to? So they've made it so that you have to buy the tickets in advance online, at least in my area. There's no more just showing up with a family. So you got to pay extra. So we probably spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 or $60 on tickets. And then when we got there, we got popcorn, drinks, candy. When the deal's all said and done, we're $125 in for the night easily for a family of 4. So how many times can somebody afford to do that? And which movies are they going to pick? And it's tough because if you've grown up with Indiana Jones and you're not really paying attention to all the hype and all the negativity that's been coming out about it, then you're going to definitely want to see that movie. So people are going to have things to pick and choose from. We'll see as the numbers come out this weekend how well it does. But yeah, it should do well. So the international box office right now, I think, is 160 million. And we'll see. Now, why do I think people are going to want to go? Why are people going to want to go to the movies and watch this? And what does it say about Hollywood in the future? So if people want to go see Indiana Jones 5 and they're lining up to go do it and it does well, that's going to send a message to studios. The message it's going to send is that nostalgia is still working. So, and it is, when you think about it. What are the movies that have been successful? Super Mario Brothers, successful. Top Gun Maverick, successful. If Indiana Jones 5 is successful, then the message it sends is that people still want to continue rehashing old IPs and somehow bringing back in a new and fresh way. The difference between all of these movies would be the time between them. So, and this is something that studios are going to consider. So when you think of Top Gun Maverick, right, it came back, 30 years after Top Gun, right? 30 years later, they had the continuation. Okay, so that's a long time. Incredible amount of anticipation built up to watch that movie. Super Mario Brothers. When was the last time you had a Super Mario Brothers movie? Well, it's been 20 years ish, right? When the movie came out. Well, actually, it's more than that. 20, yeah, 25, yeah, whatever, 20, 25 years. When the movie came out in the 90s, it was a terrible movie. There's never been a good Super Mario Brothers movie. So, everybody lined up to go see that. Now here we have Indiana Jones. When did Indiana Jones 4 come out? And some people would say Indiana Jones 4 never happened. So if that's the case, you got to go back to 1989 for the Last Crusade, for the last time at Indiana Jones. So what I'm saying here is that people tend to, we might be into the age of, I want to see something I haven't seen in a long time. If this movie is successful and people show up to go watch it, then that's what it has to mean. And what that's going to send to studios is they're going to start looking for IPs that were popular, but they have not gotten around to remaking them. When you think about all the Marvel stuff, all the DC stuff, people are just tired. They're just tired of it. There was a great graphic. I wish I had grabbed it for DC, but I showed it on, what show was it on? On the Salty Nerd show last Saturday. And the graphic basically showed like Superman, Man of Steel, right, came out to an opening. Then Superman v Batman came out, and it was huge, like had huge domestic, right, here in the States. And we kind of ignored the international box office. We just looked at the domestic. And every DC movie that came out got a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. The domestic gross on each of the weekend openings on all those movies gradually got smaller over the years and smaller and smaller. And so what that means is that if a movie doesn't do well on its opening, then there's no anticipation. People aren't excited to see it. When a movie does well on its opening, like I'll bet you anything, Barbie completely kicks ass on its opening weekend when it comes out. There's just something about the buzz. There's something about Margot Robbie. There's something going on there. That movie's going to come out and kick ass. It's got anticipation, right? Oppenheimer is going to do great on its opening. Incredible anticipation. Top Gun. These things that have anticipation, and so superhero movies have lost the anticipation, right? The desire to go out and see it. And so let's think about what kind of franchises people have been waiting for. Go back to Ghostbusters Afterlife. People have been waiting a long time, and a lot of people showed up at the theater to see that one. So we got to think about, look into the future and see, okay, what sort of franchises can Hollywood bring back that they haven't done anything? Think about things like, say, The Goonies, right? They could easily do The Goonies, hugely popular. It's been years and years and years. I could see them trying to do something where there's the continuation or maybe the next generation. How about, maybe Interview with a Vampire? It's been a long time. Just think about the big blockbuster stuff, that was happening back in the day, and what could come out that hasn't come out in years. Some people might say Back to the Future, but don't do that. We don't need Back to the Future. Back to the Future is perfect as it is. It doesn't need a continuation. It doesn't need a reboot. So let's not go there, right? Okay, but the sad part about it is that if we're stuck here in this place where, everything is about, we need to go and get a nostalgic movie to come out and come in and basically for us to get excited about going to the movies, then that's a problem. And streaming to some degree, I think, has tamped down the excitement, anticipation for going to the movies. That's one of them, because you can just see it on streaming later. But they're going to need to come out with some interesting new movies to get people back in the theater. We watched, my wife and I watched Barbarian the other night. Finally, it was a 2022 horror movie, and it was fantastic. It was a fresh take on a horror movie. It was weird and interesting and cool, and I really, really liked it. And it made me think that one of the problems we're having right now is filmmakers aren't making interesting movies. They're not going out there and doing something different. And the reason they're not doing anything different is the studio's afraid to risk. They're afraid to lose money. They want guarantees. And the way great movies are made is not with guarantees. I mean, think about it. Go back to Star Wars, right? Who wanted to bet on Star Wars? Like, nobody said that was going to be the biggest movie of all time. So what the studios need to remember is that sometimes what you think is going to always make you money isn't it. And sometimes you have to allow creatives, filmmakers, people who have different ideas to go out and do something new so that you can kind of refresh the industry and start a whole new, landslide of wonderful creative things for us to watch. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the Indiana Jones review. And I have not gotten to the point, and I apologize, where I'm able to like put in graphics and show you like clips and scenes and stuff like that. I haven't got to that point, and I apologize. I will figure out how to do that at some point and build you like a little thing. But let's just go through some of the points of the movie. And there will be spoilers once again. So if you guys don't want that, then make sure you step out here for now. So I went to the movie Indiana Jones, and it started out pretty good. Started out pretty darn good. We had the de-aged Harrison Ford at the beginning of the movie, and it starts in World War II, France. Germany's occupied, and they're at a fort where they're looking for the spear that stabbed Jesus right on the cross. And so, essentially they were looking for that. Hitler was looking for it. Indiana Jones was looking for it, and it was a de-aged Indiana Jones. They go through. We end up meeting also Mads Mikkelsen, who plays Dr. Schmidt. Well, actually, what's his official name? That's the one he's going by. He's Dr. Voller is what he's playing. He's Hitler's like guy with all the science stuff. And he's actually looking for, they find out that the Antikythera timepiece is from Archimedes from the past for Germany, which of course was found in the Aegean Sea in 1908, I think it was. So we get this de-aged Indiana Jones, and at first I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. And I was kind of, when he's sitting still, when the character is sitting still, it looked like Harrison Ford, looked like a young one. It was really well done de-aging. Where they started to have problems, think back to the Iron Man one. I can't remember which movie it was where they de-aged Robert Downey Jr. Even just as good of a job here, I think, in this. The only problem is when Indiana Jones starts moving around, when the character starts moving, you can tell like the lips don't quite match up. There's something about the eyes, and then you can tell it becomes this kind of computer graphic. It's not super obvious, but it's enough to make you realize, oh, wait a sec, we're definitely not looking at Harrison Ford. So that was interesting. But honestly, the action was very Indiana Jones. They end up, Indy gets caught. They're going to hang him. And all of a sudden the Allies come in and like drop a bomb right where they're at. The bomb doesn't go off right away. It goes through like several floors, then it explodes. And Indiana Jones, I mean, typical Harrison Ford, like early Indiana Jones. I'm talking like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones era stuff, where he's doing all the stuff. The only other issue is it might almost be like too much super Indiana Jones. Like he was extra actiony. Like you can tell that, like when they were doing The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and his dad Sean Connery, the action was slower. Like it wasn't as quick paced. And I know that's the age that we're in right now, but they can do that because they're doing it with computers and they're doing it with these green screens. When they were doing The Last Crusade, it was live action, stunts. There wasn't a lot of staged. It wasn't all staged. There wasn't a bunch of computer graphics. So there's a difference. It's slower, right? And you can follow it a little better. This is more fast, and you can kind of tell it's done with computers. So, super chat from Dr. Sarah Gardner. Let's see if I can show that because I am terrible at this. And I'm going to have to ask Brian. Let's see if you can. Let's see. Show it. I don't know if it showed. Did it show? There it is. Okay. Dr. Sarah Gardner for $5. Penny's right. I take my kiddo to the matinee. Also, I'm in the free club thing that gets 10% off. Saw Indy this morning. Oh, yeah. Awesome, Sarah. Yeah, I honestly would love to just go to a matinee. The problem is I knew I was going to be talking like Indiana Jones today on the show. So, and we had our live show yesterday, so it was like either go, bite the bullet and pay for the big thing or not. But yes, frequently if I take the kids just to go enjoy something and I'm not doing it for work, like we'll go on the weekend or try to go early in the day to watch it. That's a great idea. And yes, those movie club 10% off things, they're worth it. Like seriously, if you go to the movies twice a month, uh it's worth it to get the whichever movie pass. I'm not saying movie pass that one, but whatever your company, like Regal is the one I go to. They offer their own internal pass, and I think it's really great. So thank you for the super chat, Dr. Sarah Gardner. Appreciate it. Okay, so so they're going through. They end up on a train, and essentially the Nazis are getting away with all of this stuff, all these antiquities they've stolen, and they're trying to get out of France with all this stuff. Indiana Jones chases them. There's a bunch of fight scenes, but they've captured this new character that we have, and this was a little bit interesting. It was Basil Shaw is this new character played by Toby Jones. You've seen him in a lot of things. I guess they decided to go with a new character, and I think it wouldn't have worked, to de-age some of his old sidekicks. I think and have him. I think it would have cost too much money to de-age like John Rhys Davies or one of his other sidekicks from previous years, and so they created this new character that they wouldn't have to de-age. And they basically, he was kind of like a prototype of one of his previous sidekick. One of the guys at the, I can't remember his old boss's name, or the old guy used to help him in the previous movies. But Basil Shaw is essentially kind of a guy who's supposed to look like that. And what we find out during this movie is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Helena, is his goddaughter. And I will say one of the things that throws us off a little bit is that apparently, ever since these guys have been friends like their whole lives, like close friends, like super close, super tight. And we didn't see anything about that, so it was a little bit of a thrown off to see how emotionally connected to this character Indiana Jones is. It almost feels a little bit like, I mean, now listen, it's just movies and there's no like canon breaking here. Who knows what happened? In between, before the Last Crusade, after the Last Crusade, who knows? We don't know Indiana Jones' life, really. We get a snapshot movie, then we get a snapshot movie. We don't know what's going on in between. And apparently this guy is one of his buddies. But they've captured his buddy. Indiana Jones gets on the train, and essentially they're trying to stop the train. They end up stopping the train. And the Antikythera device ends up being kind of like the focus, the thing that they really want. And but it's only half of it. And also Dr. Voller wants it. He thinks it has magical properties. Of course, that's how Indiana Jones stuff works. They get off the train. They end up jumping in the water, and the de-aging stops. And then we find ourselves in 1969 in Harrison Ford's apartment. And what's interesting is Harrison Ford is like in his underwear. It's like, all right, I want to see an 80-year-old saggy body, although not bad for 80. He's looking pretty fit for 80-year-old guy, 78, 79 when he made the movie. But it's kind of funny. He's in an apartment in downtown, and he wakes up to basically rock and roll music playing, and he does that old kids get off my lawn. And he goes down to tell him to shut up. He's wearing like a shirt and underwear. He's banging on these guys' door. And I don't know. I understand what the point of that was, to be honest with you, because, apparently it was a work day. I don't know why. I guess they probably wanted to give us a time frame, because the music was definitely 1960s. We find out later it's 1969. It's Moon Day. There's going to be a huge parade. It's based on a historical thing that actually happened when after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon, came back. They ended up doing a ticker tape parade for them, and this is the day that's happening. Indiana Jones going into work. He's still teaching, but this is it. He's retiring. There's a retirement ceremony, and while he's in his class discussing the things of the day, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in the back answering all the questions. His students apparently don't really listen to him, don't read none of the material. It's kind of the first sign in this movie that Indiana Jones isn't taken very seriously. Can you imagine in one of his previous, go all the way back to Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, right? What's he doing when he's teaching in class? His student up front is closing her eyes, and on her eyes it's written, "I love you," I think. Like she was, in fact, his kids loved him. They listened to him. They did whatever he said. Here we are with old man Indiana Jones, Professor Jones. His students don't read any of the material. They're not really listening. They're not participating. But of course, Phoebe Waller-Bridge sitting in the back is able to answer all of the questions. And of course, it's all about the dial that will be the device that was found, that was created by Archimedes and found off the coast. And she's going to answer all the questions that he has. And then it ends, of course. Long story short, she ends up, he didn't recognize her. She had grown up. He hadn't seen her in years. And she came to see him. Essentially, she knew that he had the half of the device that her father had, and she wants it back. The introduction of Phoebe Waller-Bridge wasn't bad. Initially, it was fine. She seemed like she was smart. She knew what she was doing. And really didn't have a problem with the whole intro to it in the beginning of it. She seemed to kind of respect Indy. She was kind to him. But things start to change pretty quickly. We come to find out that in 1969, Colonel or Dr. Voller is still alive, and he's still looking for the Antikythera device. He's still trying to put it together. His goal is, what he wants to do with it is he wants to put the device together, and then that will allow him to go back in time and basically change all the mistakes that Hitler made. So he feels like Hitler made all these different mistakes, and the reason the war was won wasn't because the Allies won the war, it was because Hitler lost the war. And so he wants to go back and basically become the new and improved Hitler. So his goal is to use this device to travel back in time and fix the fact that his life didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. So he's got these couple of, it's kind of a weird situation. He's got a couple of ruffians or bodyguards that really irritate the hell out of me, by the way. I did not like his bodyguards. The one was fine. You had a big burly, like, muscle bound guy, but he had this like slimy sidekick. And I don't see his name here. He's got a mustache. He looks like he's like a Nazi wannabe from 1969. And basically, he can't be held back. Like, he listens to what the doctor wants. The CIA is involved. So apparently, Dr. Voller is the reason why the Americans got to the moon. Like, he's the guy who invented the rockets, and the government gives him like a whole lot of leeway. But they're losing patience with him over this Antikythera device. Like, he really wants, like, it's his whole goal. And he hasn't told them why he wants it. But somehow the CIA is involved with helping Dr. Voller get the device, which I guess that, going back and looking at it, they don't know that Indiana Jones has it, which I thought was interesting. But apparently they're following Helena to get it. And Helena's, of course, gone to Harrison Ford to get it. Now, the reason why Helena wants the device is so that she can sell it and pay a bunch of her debt. We're going to come to learn that Helena is not exactly the budding young the budding young good girl that Indiana Jones thinks she is. She's his goddaughter. She hasn't seen him in a long time, but she's definitely not following in the footsteps of her father, as she's kind of a little bit of a, I wouldn't say, she's kind of a less than respectable character. She does some bad things. She's kind of a thief, and she gets herself in kind of bad situations. So Dr. Voller decides, he's going to get it back. They find out that she meets with Indiana Jones, and then they're like, "Who is that?" Then the CIA does research on him, and they figure out who he is. But the problem is that Dr. Voller's henchman won't listen to the CIA agent, played by Shawnette Renee Wilson. She plays a character, Mason. She looks like a very typical 1960s black woman with an afro and kind of cool glasses. Seems like she's kind of going to be a cool character almost, but then she just kind of gets wasted. And these henchmen, I don't know how, two dudes and Dr. Voller end up getting the best of the CIA like every step of the way, but they do. Essentially, these thugs end up killing people where Indiana Jones works. And then Indiana Jones gets blamed for the murders. And so he's wanted. He ends up following Helena back to Morocco, where she's going to be auctioning off the Antikythera, this half of the Antikythera device. And he of course meets her there. He tries to stop it. There's this whole like, I'm her godfather. She's like, you can't tell me what to do. Come to find out, Helena has like a boyfriend, an old boyfriend that like is still like desperately in love with her. Mads Mikkelsen gets away with the Antikythera device because, of course, his thugs show up. Hijinks ensue, and they end up on a huge chase. You've got Helena chasing Mads Mikkelsen, Dr. Voller, trying to get the Antikythera device. You've got Harrison Ford with her, kind of trying to stop her. And, of course, you have Helena's ex-criminal boyfriend chasing her, trying to stop her because she's back in town, but also like is so in love with her that he doesn't actually want to hurt her. It's like a really weird situation. It's a strange thing. But the one thing I can say that they do in this thing is, and this is the kind of the first time when I start to feel a little weird in the show. Helena has her own sidekick. She's got a young boy who hangs out with her, much like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. When he had, I just totally drew a blank on his little sidekick's name, but he's got his own version of that character. If you remember the name, throw it in the chat for me really quick. It's, I said it all morning. I don't know how I just forgot it right now. But she's got her own version of this. A lot of people thought that Harrison Ford would have a little kid sidekick against Short Round. That's it. Thank you, Lord Toth. Tall flat. Come on, Art Mage. You mess with me? Come on, man. Short Round. That was funny, actually. So she's got her own Short Round in this movie. The kid in this movie is he does a good job as acting. His name's Ethan Isidore. He plays Teddy. But he's a little older than Short Round, and it's a little bit confusing because you can't tell if he like has a crush on Helena or he looks at her as like a mother figure, but he's like he's like Short Round, like on steroids. And he kind of orders her around a little. It's really kind of weird. So you thought Harrison Ford was going to have a Short Round, but he doesn't. It's Helena that has a Short Round. And so he's, of course, with her and they're chasing, and Harrison Ford's with her. And things get weird. Helena like does some weird stuff and this is part of the problem with the movie. Like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she may be a good actress. I think she's probably a better comedian. If they would have had like Emily Blunt in this movie, or let me think, any female action star, like when you look at him, you're like, okay, that's an action star. Like Emily Blunt to me is like the female action prototype star right now. Like she looks like she can kick some ass. The problem with Phoebe Waller-Bridge is she doesn't. She looks like she's either going to duck into a library or go out on stage and do a comedy routine. She doesn't look like an action star. So when she jumps from one of the little golf carts that they're driving around onto the back of a Cadillac with a giant weapon and holds on for dear life and then strangles. I mean, it's like you just look at her and go, that shit would never happen. Probably. You look at it, it's just not going to go down like that. And of course, it's not Harrison Ford doing the action. And this is the other thing. He does some action. You can tell, like, it happens so quickly. You can tell that it's not him really doing it, which is fine. You're not going to have a guy like that doing it. And and you find that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is really doing most of the action in these scenes. And I don't think that it was a choice to do it like, well, let's do it because we want to be woke. I think they did it because, frankly, Harrison Ford is just too old. I don't think that even on some of the close-ups for these scenes where you got to get his face and you got to tie him down into a harness where you're going, the car's still moving quickly. I don't know if they could get him to do these things, even if his stunt double's doing it. And because the movie needs to have action, needs to move, they end up really splitting the action, which is not something that we're used to. I mean, if you go back to, I know nobody wants to talk about the fourth movie. If you go back to the fourth movie, Shia LaBeouf, who plays his son, and that does come up in this movie. It does for very, very quickly, very short, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Shia was actiony, but Indiana Jones was the action hero of that movie. Go back to The Last Crusade. Sean Connery was actiony, but Indiana Jones was the action hero. All the times when they were involved in an action scene and Sean Connery's like, okay, Junior, go get him. And he would just like let him get beat up or let him go through all the tough stuff. Indiana Jones is an action hero. Okay. So what happens is Helena ends up sharing a lot of the action. She does a lot of the action that Harrison Ford could not do. It's obvious. Would James Mangold have had Harrison Ford do these things? Yes, I think that's the way he would have written it. It's the way he would have wanted it. But I do believe that I'm going to go through the rest of it, and then I'll tell you why I think he did what he did. So essentially, they go on this thing. They end up getting, they lose the device in the end, but they end up getting the correct half of the device or another half to find the secondary half of the device. They have running back and forth with Dr. Voller and his henchmen. Essentially, they end up going to the Aegean Sea off the coast of Greece, where the original wreck site where the Antikythera was found. And with all of her research, apparently Helena has figured out that, or Basil, her father, figured out that the other half of the device was on the ship, that it was actually together. And they only found half of it because the people who dove to look for it didn't go to the bottom of the sea. They went to a shallow portion. So they end up going out there, and apparently Indiana Jones, and this is the other part that I didn't like, was essentially Helena has all the information. Dr. Voller is made off with the half that they needed, but she said she's memorized everything that her father, all of her father's journals. And so Harrison Ford's like, so she doesn't need him. And she's kind of acting like she doesn't need him. But then he says, well, I know this guy with a boat. You need me. And it's interesting because in an Indiana Jones movie, I don't think it ever should be that Indiana Jones isn't the primary person who knows everything, who has everything, who takes care of everything. Anybody in an Indiana Jones movie with him should be the sidekick talent. And you can go back to Marion. You can go back to the sexy girl dancer in Temple of Doom. You can go back to his father. You can go back to Shia LaBeouf. He is the centerpiece. He's the guy who has everything. Whoever's there with him has additional information to help. And now his father definitely had a lot of information on the cup. But in this situation, Harrison Ford needs to be the guy in charge. And it definitely feels like he's trying to find reasons to stay with Helena on this trip. They end up in the Aegean. We end up meeting Antonio Banderas' character, Ronaldo, plays a very small part. It was nice to hear Puss in Boots' voice. It's definitely strong Puss in Boots. I don't think Antonio Banderas knows how to do his voice any other way than as Puss in Boots now, because it comes out in that very heavy, thick accent. Anyways, they dive down to the bottom of the ocean with 1969 technology, which I wouldn't have felt comfortable diving down to the bottom of the sea in that, but they do. It's a pretty cool scene. They got really interesting visuals. The great visuals from the bottom of the sea back up to the boat, which I really liked, and I could really envision myself being there. That was cool. But they get down there and they find essentially another piece to the puzzle, which will help them get the location of the other half of the Antikythera device so that it can be put together. They get that, but just as they get it, Dr. Voller and his henchmen show up. and of course they take everybody, and of course they have to give up their half of the thing. But luckily, you know, Helena and Harris and Indiana Jones were the only people who could decipher it. For whatever reason, Indiana gets captured, and Helena ends up having to like rescue them. Like I said, this is not. I mean, listen, if you have one of those scenes or two of those scenes where somebody else is rescuing Indiana Jones in a movie, then that's fine. Like, have one of those. It's a little bit of balance. I mean, it happened. Short Round, I think, saved Indy. You had I can't remember her name in the Temple of Doom, but she had to, like, remember when they first go down there and she's got to like step on the right plate, and there's like all these disgusting creatures, and like Indiana Jones is like, oh my God, you know, do it now. I'm going to die. We're going to die. Right. She has to save him. Right. He's stuck. That's how you save Indiana Jones. He's just stuck, and you don't have somebody else who is better than him, who does it better, that's kind of what Helena does in this scene. She figures out, you know, she's kind of keeping Voller talking because he's interested in the device, while at the same time she's got like a dynamite stick and she gets a cigarette. It's all very spotlight on her kind of thing. And Indiana Jones is just sitting there kind of listening to the story as well. He's not really, how he participates. She puts her hands behind her back, and he like takes her hands and puts the cigarette to the fuse to light it. And that's it. But the good news is that because she read the device, they know where the second half of the Antikythera is located, and they're able to escape the boat, get away, and they travel to Syracusa. It's not, they call it Syracuse in the movie, but it's actually Syracusa on the island of Sicily, which is Italy now. I was actually stationed there for 3 years. I've been there many, many times, and it's actually an incredibly awesome place. But they need to go essentially to the birth, wherever Archimedes was buried. And that's where they're going. Well, they're going, but Dr. Voller is following. Indy ends up getting there first. Of course, they capture the kid, you know, and Indiana Jones, and but that's fine because Indy's like, they're not going to hurt the kid. Indiana Jones and Helena end up finding the second half of the Antikythera device, and when they find it, it's interesting because Archimedes is wearing a watch, like a current day watch. And that was a bit surprising. Didn't see that coming. They get the Antikythera device, second half, and of course, Voller shows up, steals it, captures Indiana Jones, and the boy, the Short Round number 2, and Helena are trying to keep up with them because they're on their way to essentially go into the sky. And what happens is with this Antikythera device is you go into a portal into the sky and then go back in time, essentially. So they're going to find like a World War II bomber. Dr. Voller's dressed up in his Nazi uniform, and he's got all of his little associates in Nazi clothes. They're going to go back. They're going to overthrow Hitler, and they're going to change the tide of World War II. Of course, they've captured Indiana Jones. They're bringing him along. Okay, I'm not sure why, but they are. Maybe they really didn't give a good reason why they were bringing him along, but they did. And of course, Helena's, you know, trying to, you know, chase him, essentially. They get to the airport where this bomber is about to take off. Helena jumps on a motorcycle. It's pouring down rain. Short Round number 2 jumps in a plane. Now, at the very beginning of the movie, you see Short Round like practicing flying a plane, but with like papers and wood, and like he's in a casino. Excuse me. And he's like trying to learn how to fly a plane, but he's never actually flown a plane. So he decides he's going to go jump in a plane, and they're going to chase them and fly in this plane. Well, Helena ends up, you know, chasing on the motorcycle in the pouring rain down. She's going 100 miles an hour in pitch black dark. It would have never happened. It was so ridiculous. She manages to ride the motorcycle, avoiding the blades. It was really, I got to tell you, it was so unbelievable. It was dumb. Emily Blunt doing it, I might have believed it. I'm sorry. It's just the way it worked. So she ends up getting to the landing gear. She, jumps on the landing gear. The landing gear goes up in the plane, and all of a sudden she's in the plane. They're flying and just like we saw in the previews when we were trying to figure out if there was time travel, there is time travel in this movie. But not in the way that people thought it was, not in the way Doomcock predicted it would be, not in the least. As they're going along, and this is something good Indiana Jones figures out somehow by looking at the papers he had, the dates, or what's happening. He figures it out from continental drift. So he's looking down and he sees everything moving in the cockpit, and he realizes continental drift. Continental drift has been happening for all time, ever since the world was Pangea, and all the continents were together, and of course they drifted apart. Well, continental drift's been going on since 200 BC when Archimedes built this thing, and so his mathematical calculations would have changed over the last 2,200 years. So Indiana Jones is saying, hey, you're going to the wrong time. You're going to this. It's not going to go back to where you didn't calculate it properly, Voller. It's not going to take you back to World War II. You didn't account for continental drift. Voller doesn't believe him. And he still continues to go. But then all of a sudden he starts to have these like second thoughts. Like, Indiana Jones is almost chiding him. Like, you're screwing up, man. And so Dr. Voller says, okay, at the last minute, okay, abort, don't do it, don't go in. But of course they can't stop. The plane gets sucked into the vortex, the time tunnel, I think somebody put here, Archmage. And of course they come out, and Dr. Voller's like, yes, we did it, because they see the coast of Sicily, and Syracuse. And they're like, we did it, because that was the plan. They're going to fly there, and then they were going to, basically go up to Germany and land. But when they get through, all of a sudden you look into the water and you see a bunch of Tyramaes, and there's some sort of naval battle going on, and you find out that the Romans are actually attacking the Greeks at Syracuse, the Battle of Syracuse. And they didn't go back to 1939, which is where they were trying to get to. They're in 200 BC. Yeah. And they totally miscalculated time. They show up. The plane is not in great shape. Short Round ends up coming also through with a guy who fell asleep. I guess the guy fell asleep in his plane. Short Round stole it. Short Round 2 stole it, came through the vortex with him, and they're actually also came back in time. The plane's not doing good that they're on the bomber, and all of a sudden the Romans who are down below start attacking the plane, and you got these giant, not medieval because it's before medieval, giant hooks and devices. They think it's a dragon. They think the big plane is a dragon. You've got Voller's idiot side henchman shooting at the Romans with like machine guns from the plane. Of course, the Romans are shooting back. Long story short, the plane ends up crashing. Helena runs up to Indiana and says, I'm here to save you. Okay. Again, I guess. And they leap from the plane with a parachute, and they land safely. Now, Archimedes, of course, is down there on the ground. The Germans the Nazis all end up dying. Okay. And all that's left alive is Indy, but he's been shot. Indy got shot actually a long time before in the film. But he's been kind of sitting there with a bullet. Of course, it's another reason why Harrison Ford can't do anything. He's been shot with a bullet, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge has to do all the action stuff. Harrison Ford lands. We also see that Archimedes grabs the watch off of Dr. Voller. So Archimedes, the watch that he ends up buried with, that they find in his tomb, ends up being. So of course we've got this weird paradox, time paradox, right? How could they have gone back in time? If Archimedes couldn't have created the device had not they gone back in time. It's a grandfather paradox. I really wish they hadn't done that. I don't know if it was necessary for them to tell the story that way, but essentially what ends up happening is this device that Archimedes has created only goes back to one time. He created the device for the future to come back and help them defeat the Romans at this one place in time. So no matter what happened with this device, whatever Dr. Voller wanted to do, he could have only come back to that time, the Battle of Syracuse, and where the Greeks wanted help. That's apparently the whole point of the device. Lame, in my opinion, honestly. I don't know why the device couldn't just be a time travel device, why it had to, I don't know, James and the guys who helped him write this, I don't know why they came up with the device in that way. But that's fine. I'm going through it. The movie is just kind of meh. It's not fantastic at this point, but then something happens that pisses me off. Really made me mad. Indiana Jones decides he wants to stay. He's gonna stay here. He's been shot. He's not doing well. They can get back. Short Round 2 has the plane. They can fly back through the portal before it closes and get back home. But Indy's like, no, listen, I've spent my whole life being an archaeologist. Now I'm here. I just want to stay here. There's nothing good for me back there. There's nothing I can do. I'm just going to stay here. And so him and Helena argue back and forth over this. And she's like, no, you can't. Archimedes shows up. Like they're having this conversation, sort of, because they can't speak, he speaks a little bit of their language, but he wants to stay. And Helena's like, yeah, I just can't let you do that. And she like punches him in the face and knocks him out. Like for real. Like Indiana Jones wants to stay there, but she's like, screw that. I'm not letting that happen. And she like punches him in the face and knocks him out cold. The next scene goes from being in 200 BC to back in 1969 in his apartment. He's in bed, waking up. He wakes up. You find out she, of course, knocked him out, drug him back, wasn't going to let him stay there. She wanted him. Yeah. And the motivation behind it was she kept telling him, you're going to mess up time. You can't stay here. You're needed in the future, blah, blah, blah. If they would have done it more to come across with like, she cares about him, she loves him, she needs him. And that's the reason why he can't stay. Like if there had been like some more emotional buy off where there had been a moment where she's like, I love you. I need you in my life. If you don't think anybody else needs you or loves you, I do. Like, fuck yeah, that would have been good. Like kudos. Like that's how that should have been written, but not, no, you're going to screw up time. I'm going to punch you in the face and knock you out. I know you're Indiana Jones, but screw you. I'm badass Helena, and I'm going to, kick your ass and take you back whether you like it or not. That's what happened. As we get back, now I did mention earlier that we did get a John Rhys Davies. I didn't mention earlier. We got a John Rhys Davies sighting, of course, Sala from the original movie. And God, I love John Rhys Davies from Sliders, from The Lord of the Rings, all the stuff that he's done over the years, and especially Indiana Jones. But he has a very small moment where essentially Indiana Jones, we learn, has brought Sala and his family back to the United States after the events of the first Indiana Jones movie. They've been living there. And essentially Sala gives him a ride to the airport. He does offer to go with him on his adventure, but of course, Indiana Jones is like, no. At the end, he does show up again with his grandkids. Helena's there. And then we find out, and this is probably the best part of the whole movie, is Marion is there. Now, what we didn't know throughout the entire film was, and I'm sorry I didn't get this earlier, but Indiana Jones and Marion are getting a divorce. They're separated. And he keeps saying that she doesn't like him anymore. And essentially what happened is their son was killed during Vietnam. So, of course, we were sending troops there since 1963. So in the course of 6 years, at some point, Indy's son went to war. He didn't want him to go. He told him, I don't join, don't go. But he didn't listen to him. And his death had an impact on, made Marion and Indy grieve. And that grieving tore them apart. And so we learn at the end of the movie, and even during the movie, like you can tell Indiana Jones is kind of a broken man. He's drinking too much. There's a lot of alcohol. They allude to it. They don't make him sloppy or disgusting, but you can just tell that he's and I get what he's trying to do there. And I'm going to go into that in just a second, why I think he did that. But there is one good part at the end where they're alone. It's him and Marion. And if you recall back to Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, when they're on the boat towards the end, and he's talking about how he hurts everywhere, and she's like, where does it hurt? And so she kisses his elbow, then she kisses, and then they end up kissing, right? That happens here, but in reverse, because her pain and her sorrow and her turmoil over the loss of her son is still with her. And so he kisses her elbow, then he here and there, and they kind of have this healing moment where everything's going to be okay. And it's a really sweet moment. It's a really nice. It's definitely the best moment of the whole film as far as like a sentimental moment. You wanted to see him back with Marion. She was always the one that he needed to be with, and so it was good that it ended in that way. Now, about people worried that the torch is being passed to Phoebe Waller-Bridge to be the new Indiana Jones. I didn't get that at all. I did not get that impression. Her short round number 2, John Rhys Davies and his grandkids went off to get ice cream. I've heard some other people say that she was off on another adventure. No, they were just going to get ice cream. But at the very end, you get the hat, Indiana Jones's hat. It's on a clothesline drawing, and it kind of goes down into that Bugs Bunny, like when things like the screen's going to end, but it stops like a little circle on the hat, and then you see Indiana Jones grab the hat and pull it off. So that's how it ends. It doesn't end with her getting it. Overall, the movie was just kind of okay. I will say my kids didn't really like it. My wife loved it. She really had a good time. She thought it was a great movie, enjoyed the hell out of it. And some of the people in the theater enjoyed it. So why did James Mangold there is no post-credit scene in this movie. The very last scene is the hat and Indiana Jones grabbing it, which is appropriate. That's the way you want to see it end. Like Indiana Jones keeps his hat. That's Indiana Jones. Why do I think that James Mangold did the movie this way? I think that he had a lot of success with Logan. And I think he enjoys or he likes the idea of taking these characters that have a huge history and trying to take the character in a different direction. And he did a really good job with that final story of Professor X and Wolverine. But here's the problem. Like Indiana Jones is an action hero, right? That's what he is. Professor X is an invalid in a wheelchair, although be it he's a mutant with incredible powers. There's no physical thing that he needs to do. And also Wolverine could help carry the story. Everybody loves Wolverine. If you're going to do Indiana Jones and he can't carry the movie, you're going to have somebody likable that can carry the movie, that can be his Wolverine, right? That's what they needed here. James Mangold made a mistake. And I don't know if he's the one who chose Phoebe Waller-Bridge for this part. I don't know why he couldn't have a godson. Why did he have to have a goddaughter? Right? Now, listen, I get it. We want more people to show up at the movies. We want to make sure the ladies are happy, and that they feel like that they're all in on it. But I got to tell you, it would have made a whole lot more sense to have either a female action star play the character or a younger male actor who could make you feel like you're watching an Indiana Jones movie, could carry it like Wolverine did in Logan. I mean, when you think about it, Harrison Ford was born 7 months after Pearl Harbor happened. I mean, the man is old, So I think he just has that problem with it. I don't think Phoebe Waller-Bridge did an awful job. I think her acting was fine. I just think she's doing what they set her up to do. Yeah, I think maybe even like a Margot Robbie or a Zoe Saldana, could have been great in the role. I mean, there's so many different people who could have played it. I just think they picked the wrong person. And I don't know why. Going back and nobody can really tell us. Is it a Kathleen Kennedy thing? Is it hey, we need, X person? I mean, there is some element to James Mangold, when you're making movies at Disney, there is an element of you got to do it the way they want to do it. And if you look back at James Mangold's movies, it's kind of not how he operates. And you got to be honest, he hasn't been really happy making Indiana Jones 5, going back to all the way when he's attacking people like Matt from Salty Nerd on Twitter, and his interaction with this movie hasn't been typical James Mangold feeling about Indiana Jones. It'll be interesting to see if he still does a Star Wars trilogy or Star Wars movie after this experience doing Indiana Jones. I don't think so. I do think that this is going to be kind of a little bit of a stain on what otherwise has been a really great movie making career for Mangold. And I think this is probably going to be in my opinion, it's going to be his worst movie. Mads Mikkelsen was a believable bad guy. He did a good job. He really does. He's motivated. He's not like you can understand his motivation, the fact that his life didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. So you can see why he's motivated to do what he is, and that's really good. I didn't like his goons, annoying. The CIA can't even stop him, which is dumb. I mean, it's like two guys. It was just really weird. Yeah. A lot of the movie feels like camouflage. It feels like they're trying to cover up the fact that Harrison Ford couldn't do a lot. And I really think that the biggest problem with this movie is that he's just old. And they shouldn't have made a fifth movie. I mean, it feels like a cash grab. I don't know what Harrison Ford said. I don't know if he said, like, I can do this. We should do this. I don't know. But all I know is we didn't need this movie. I mean, frankly speaking, it could have stopped after 3. So, but that's my take on it. While we're here, let's go and do the thing we do every time after we watch a movie. And let's place it somewhere, shall we? Let me take a drink of water. Okay. So if you take a look at, now listen, this all-time movie list, you're going to see stuff on here that's not, not all the movies are here. Since I started making this list about a year and a half ago, I think maybe a little over a year ago, these are the movies I've seen in the last year and a half that I've remembered to put on the list. So as we go down, we can take a look, and we're going to put Indiana Jones 5 on this list. And as we go down, you can see that Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, for me, currently sits in number 11 spot, right below the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and right above Empire Strikes Back at number 11 all time. Going down a little further, you can see that my second favorite movie in the franchise is The Last Crusade, sitting at number 24. It sits right below The Goonies and right above The Godfather. Try to take it to the top. And of course, Temple of Doom is my third favorite. Good movie, but I don't like it as much as I liked Crusade. I put it right below Independence Day, 1996, and right above Spaceballs. And of course, even though a lot of people want to say that Indiana Jones 4 never happened, it is on my list because I have seen it this year. And Indiana Jones 4 sits at, where are you? Number 92. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. It sits below Avatar. I didn't love Avatar. And it sits above Shang-Chi. Still an enjoyable movie. As much as I know people don't like that movie, but it's still popcorn fun to watch, in my opinion. And I do believe that the aliens are probably interdimensional beings just out there. So where do we put number 5? Where do we put it? Well, let's match it up against Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. It's a better movie than that movie. Not by much, but it is better. So I think we can come in here and say to ourselves, is it better than Avatar 2009? Yes. Is it better than Ben-Hur 1959? Is it better than Star Wars The Force Awakens? And as disappointing as those Star Wars movies end up being, The Force Awakens was still one that I got hope there. I'm going to go ahead and put Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I know you guys like my Excel spreadsheets here. I'm going to put Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny below Ben-Hur and above Avatar. (2023) and it's currently sitting at number 91. There you have it. That is it. So I would love to know what you guys think about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny if you guys saw it. And let me know in the comments below, and I would love to hear more about it. All right. It's 1 o'clock. We got some time. Do you guys want to talk about one more thing before we go? All right. Let's talk about one more thing here. Oh, Snow White is the worst movie you watched. Yeah. So real quick, let me just show you. Let's go look at this list real quick one more time. Let me try to scroll in a little more. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so you guys can kind of see it better. So, of course, this is movies I've seen in the last year and a half. And just really quickly, with Tombstone from 1993, I saw this movie 17 times, I think 17 times in the theater back in 1993. It's just still my favorite movie to this time. It's got the most one-liners, the best quotes. It's just one of my favorite. It's my favorite movie. I can't, I watch a lot of stuff to get, to try to get there. But as you go through the list and you take a look, in recent times, the first movie to be able to crack the top 10 really was the Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut, which is just a freaking incredible movie. Like the way I like to watch movies, and I like superhero movies that have some levity, but I really like serious superhero movies that have, drama and make me feel this great emotion. And so that movie sits there for me. But in my top 10, if you think about it, like that's the only recent movie that's even cracked my top 10. If you go down here and I'll just give you a quick snapshot at some of them. But if you go down to the end and take a look at my bottom movies that I've seen this year. Yes, I've seen all these movies this year. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's not that it was bad. I mean, for its time, it was groundbreaking. But the problem is that the animation is so old. It's just, when you match it up against things in current day, there's just no way to kind of, to say it's a good movie. So it's definitely the least favorite. Fantasia, I've actually kind of always liked that cartoon with Mickey Mouse. He's the sorcerer's apprentice and making things come to life. That's always been good. So yeah, the bottom of the list is the bottom list for a reason. And these things will probably just keep falling as more movies. I wish I'd started this list 10, 20 years ago, and hopefully we'll just keep updating it and see what happens. All right. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is a little thing. I don't really have, we talked a lot of Star Trek yesterday. I know that Strange New Worlds did the whole thing. They've started a new universe. We now know for sure that Discovery and Strange New Worlds are in a different universe than TOS, TNG, and all the other legacy Treks. So that's interesting. And it's going to be interesting going forward, kind of watching, how that impacts the stories that come and how we feel about them. I'm really curious to see what that looks like. Robert Meyer Burnett put out a video yesterday where he talked about Strange New Worlds is trying to, or the current showrunners are trying to delete Star Trek TOS in that history, which I thought was interesting because Brian had brought up the idea during yesterday's show. Brian brought up the idea that because we're in a single timeline, that the actions of Strange New Worlds and what they're doing now is actually replacing the TOS TNG that we know. I don't like that idea at all. So that's the argument also that Robert Meyer Burnett had. Here's what I'll say about it. If they keep making Star Trek Picard season 3, if they make Star Trek Legacy, then in my mind, that's continuing that universe. If this is the end, if they never end up making anything from that universe again, if they don't have, Janeway and Jerry Ryan and all those, and the continuation of that story, then this is the new universe that Star Trek is in, and that's what we'll have to live with. So I'm sure more on that going forward as we come out. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about today is something that came out that really bugged the heck out of me, and it's about, if you guys recently saw Across the Spider-Verse, the second iteration of the new Spider-Man movies. If you saw that recently, it actually did really well at the theater, and it's incredible, really incredible movie. But it looks like Spider-Verse artists claim working on the film was death by 1,000 paper cuts, and the third film might be delayed. As was put out, the third film is supposed to come out next year. So we waited 5 years for the second film, right? All through COVID and all that stuff. And now they said the third film is supposed to come out next year. And of course, the films are made by Lord and Miller, who they do a lot of animation, and they have high expectations for their people. But let's see what they're saying here. According to people who worked on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the working conditions required to produce the staggering artistry behind the visuals was not sustainable. Look, anybody who's watched that movie, when they come out of it, the one thing they say is, my God, that was incredible, incredible graphics, incredible art. It looks more like a comic book movie. It looks like a comic book that's come to life, and then just simple animation. And so, like, huge shout out and huge kudos to the people who artistically created that look and made that happen. But apparently they're not happy about it. Multiple Across the Spider-Verse crew members, ranging from artists to production executives who have worked anywhere from 5 to a dozen years in the animation business, described the process of making the $150 million Sony project as uniquely arduous, involving a relentless kind of revisionism that compelled approximately 100 artists to flee the movie before its completion. 100 artists flee the movie before its completion. That sounds crazy to me. Let's make this bigger. Okay, well, why? Many of the complaints have to do with producer-writer Phil Lord's management style, especially his seeming inability to conceptualize 3D animation and his preference to edit fully rendered work instead. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you've ever worked in editing, a lot of times when you're editing a bunch of things together, you have to, in order to see it all together, you have to render it so that it sticks together, and then it can be one thing. The music, all of the scenes, all the special effects, everything together makes it rendered so that you can watch it fully rendered. So what they're saying is that Phil Lord wanted everything fully rendered to make his decisions, then he would make choices, he'd make changes. So what I would argue is that I understand that may be more cumbersome for the people who are creating the animation and doing the work. But if that allows the director or the creator to make decisions that make the movie better, and that's the way they want to go with it, then that's what you should do. So, like, if not fully editing and rendering the work was not going to make the work better, then thank you, love. If that wasn't going to make the work better, then screw it. That's what they should do. And if it requires more work, the ultimate goal is for the movie to be great. And we can all agree that the movie is great. Okay, so whatever Phil Lord's management style is, the movie ended up being successful. So let's take that into consideration as we keep reading. Across the Spider-Verse was originally set for release in April of 2022, before it was postponed to October of that year, and then June 2023. The reason given was pandemic-related delays. However, the 4 crew members say animators who were hired in the spring of 2021 sat idle for anywhere from 3 to 6 months that year, while Lord tinkered with the movie in the layout stages, when the first 3D representation of storyboards are created. It sure sounds like the main creators behind Across the Spider-Verse were trying to treat the film as a live-action movie where you can just reshoot a scene, but that's a completely insane way to tackle animation. There were constant changes and cuts, supposedly with Lord. Nothing is ever final or approved. Nothing was really set in stone. They were incapable of committing to an idea. One animator even claims Lord fought with Sony on Across the Spider-Verse for the entire process, rewriting the film up until the last minute. If you are fighting with the studio and your movie ends up becoming good, then that's a success. That's a win. Jenna Ortega fighting with Netflix over Wednesday. She didn't like the way her character was going, didn't like the way things on set were working. She fought about it. It got changed. Wednesday turned out good. Is she bad or is she good? Did she do the right thing or the wrong thing? Well, maybe it wasn't the right thing for everybody working there that wanted to go home early or wanted to not work so hard or didn't want to have to be in so much pain while they're creating the creative process. But that's what you're there to do. You're not there to simply show up to work every day and make something and go home. If you're in Hollywood and you're making movies and you're making TV shows, the goal is to make something good, something that your audience will be engaged with and want to watch and will think that it is good. Why do we do that? I mean, listen, there are some jobs where you can get up in the morning and you can go out and swing a hammer all day, and it may not make a big difference how many, shingles you put up on the roof or how many things that you accomplish that day. It may not matter, but when you're making a movie, every element of the movie, needs to be good so that the movie overall is good. You're creating something, you're making something that's creative, that's artistic. Okay. So if there's process is more demanding and it's good, then that's it. Now, if you half-ass it and you end up with something else, some lame, why are all these Miles Morales movies getting such high acclaim? Because it looks amazing. That's why. It looks incredible. The story's well done. Okay. That's why it's being talked about the way it is. That's why people like it. If it had been some, anime version, some basic animation movie, nobody would give a shit. And nobody would be talking about it. They wouldn't care. So they need to think about that. So it says here, as a result, the creatives in the Vulture article are saying they were pushed to work more than 11 hours a day, 7 days a week for more than a year to make up for lost time, and were forced back to the drawing board as many as 5 times to revise work during the final rendering stages. Well, boo fucking who. That's what I'll tell you. Boo hoo. Okay, look. Some people might say, wow, 11 hours a day, 7 days a week for more than a year. Now look, this is my business, mine and my brother's business here on YouTube and what we do full time. In order to have some success, to be good, to bring you guys live shows and to talk about and to do all the videos that we do, Brian and I work routinely 15 hours, 15, 16, sometimes 18 hours a day. Yes, 7 days a week. For more than a year, for several years now. When I was in the military, and I get it, I'm in the military. When I was deployed, sometimes for up to a year, there were no days off. You worked basically till you got up and then till you went to bed every day around the clock every year. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I have very little sympathy for working 11 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year. Because what happens when the movie is done and you get paid for your work, because you're getting paid for your time and your work, okay, you're going to take a break, take a month off, take 2 months off, take 3 months off. How many people in other industries get to take time off after your film is done or after your work is done? Hey, you get done building a house? Go take a month off. No, it's not how it works. You got to work your ass off for a year to get the movie out on time. And then you can go on 4-month vacation or, whatever, 4-week vacation, come back and start over again. Cry me a frickin' river. People need to be tougher. Okay. You need to be tougher. You had to go back and do animation 11 hours a day. Oh my God. And it turned out amazing. It turned out unbelievable. The movie's fantastic. Probably the best movie of the year so far. We'll see what happens with Oppenheimer, but definitely. Okay. Let's see. We also found out today that there are different cuts of the movie being screened in theaters where certain details or minor lines are different in a number of scenes. Well, that's kind of weird. Yes, multiple cuts of the film have been playing in theaters this whole time. Andrew Levitin, who worked as an associate editor in the sequel, congratulated a viewer on Twitter for correctly identifying the different versions. All right, I don't know whose fault that is. Is it a studio fault? Did they, were there edited changes made and the studio got the wrong reel out, the wrong movie out to the wrong places? I don't know. Says here, isn't this constantly a problem with Phil Lord and his partner Chris Miller? I feel like a version of this story comes out every time they're involved with a new project. This makes me think twice about the actual reason why they left the Star Wars film Solo. Many people blamed Kathleen Kennedy for that, but maybe he's just an overbearing person to work with, creatively speaking. All right, let me tell you what I think. Let's take a look at this another way. Kathleen Kennedy, maybe she wants a movie to be done a certain way. Maybe she wants certain female characters to be highlighted. Maybe she wants certain people to be hired. Maybe she wants things to be done a certain way because she has some sort of agenda. And maybe Lord and Miller are like, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. We want to make a good movie. If we do it the way that you want to do it, it's going to be a shitty movie. So we don't want to do that movie. Stop making us do a shitty movie. We want to do a good movie. Stop. Maybe more people should tell Kathleen Kennedy to take a hike, because when Ron Howard took over the film and did Solo, guess what? That movie's hot garbage. It's a terrible movie. That is the worst version of Han Solo. That character, his name's Han. His name's Han Solo because he wanted to be alone. Give me a break. So, anyways, I'm going to err on the side of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and let me tell you why we're going to err on the side of them. Let me just pull up. Let's just pull up their IMDb, huh? Let's just pull up and see what they've done. Let's see. Yeah, because honestly, if they've done a good job with their movies, who are we going to side with? Are we going to side with, people who are bitching and complaining, or what are we going to do? Okay, so here we go. What do they got? Okay, the Spider-Verse movies, a couple of them. All right. Cocaine Bear, which I didn't see. Honestly, it looks kind of weird. It's not something that, it looked interesting, but it wasn't my cup of tea. Should I watch it? Probably. I heard good things about it. So they started working on Solo, a Star Wars story, nothing. Oh, let's go here. What is this? The Lego Batman movie. Great movie. That's honestly, like, when you look at all the Batman movies, Lego Batman movie is way up there. Mitchell's versus the Machines was actually a really good movie. Lego Movie 2. Lego Movie Ninjago movie. The original Lego movie. Wow, they got a lot of stuff in here. Anyways, my point is that these guys have been extraordinarily successful, especially in animation. So I get you may not want to work long hours, but ultimately you have to look at how successful the movie was, how well it did, and you have to ask yourself, was it worth the success? And I do think that this movie is. And listen, if it takes them 2 years to get us out of this cliffhanger, we are in a cliffhanger from Across the Spider-Verse going into the final movie. I'll wait 2 years. It's going to be good. I want it to be good. I'm willing to wait. It's okay for us to wait for movies. Disney, it should have been okay for us to wait for the Star Wars movies. You should have given us another year. You should have given them another year to make them in between. You shouldn't have rushed them out every 2 years to get a movie out. We can wait. Okay. It's worth waiting. Haven't you ever heard waiting builds the anticipation? It builds the excitement. Okay. And then you just got to make sure you deliver. $2 super chat from Brain 3. Yeah, that's my bro. I know right there. Suck it up, Buttercup. Are you talking about me or are you talking about the people working? I think he agrees with me though. Anyways, guys, yeah, so that's what I got for you guys today for Palantir. We talked Indiana Jones. Hopefully you guys, if you want, is it worth the price of popcorn? For my wife, it was. Do I wish I hadn't seen it? No, I'm glad I saw it. But honestly, I would say it's probably one of those movies that if you want to wait for it to come out on streaming, you can do that. There's no reason to go to the theater and watch it now, honestly. You're not going to miss anything. obviously I needed to do it so I could talk to you guys about it. But other than that, I think you can wait for it on streaming. Let me know what you guys think below. It was really great hanging out with you guys today. Don't forget, Brian will be back on Sunday for, I think he's actually going to be on Salty Nerds on Saturday. Then on Sunday, he's doing Popcorn Power Hour. We won't have any Raw Rant on Monday. And I'm actually going to be gone. I'm going to be gone the 3rd. I'm leaving Monday, and I will be back on the 10th, late on the 10th. So you guys won't see me until the Thursday after next. So for this Thursday's show, I'm assuming Brian will have a guest. We'll have to see who that is, and you'll get your next episode of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Anyways, I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. I know Nerdrotic Friday Night Tights is about to start, so you probably want to go check that out. But hopefully I'll see you guys when I get back. And I love you and appreciate y'all. All right.